So, we go again. This is episode number 26 of the Darkness to Light Godcast. Today is October 10th, 2024. I was informed this morning by one of the members of the programme that it's World Mental Health Day, and I was looking for a wee bit of inspiration to what the Godcast was going to be about. The last few days, anybody who's been watching online, I've been kind of kicking lumps out of... I've not been kicking lumps, that's the wrong way to put it. I've been shining a light on some of the challenges that I see within the world, and I very much felt like this Godcast was going to be about the fight and the challenges we face. I believe the world, we're in a war just now, we're in a war for a long time, and they're talking about the big war. But the war that I've seen for so long has been the battle for your soul, for our souls. That's been very evident to me in the last probably 10-12 years, just watching the world and seeing how it goes together and all the challenges that we face. And out walking in one of the groups that we've got for the inner circle and the team that's working with the Vortex, just now, when the lads put on it's World Mental Health Day, and straight away, it come right in, right, okay, that's what the Godcast needs to be about. I was a wee bit struggling with the whole, the fight and, the challenges and the war and that kind of stuff. It's been like the last couple of days. I've been online battling a wee bit, which is okay. I believe that there absolutely needs to be a line in the sand, and it's very much a time for darkness or light. And the subject of mental health absolutely feeds into that. Of course it does, because of the horrors of the world and all the challenges that we face. Then people's mental health is obviously an all-time low. So many people are suffering, so many people are in bondage, so many people are hopeless, and many are at the point of the possibility of ending their lives, and things like suicide and all that kind of just horrible, just sad place when people reach that point. And for me, my journey, and not everything that I do, but the reason that I do it is because of my own journey with mental health. That's how I get into this work. Again, for me to be talking about this, and I suppose I'm an expert on it now, after the last 28 years of working on myself and working with some of the absolute greats, holistic practices, tools, techniques, teachers, and based on my own experience. Mental health is absolutely the reason I get into this, and I think that's really important. There are so many people who are not qualified. When I was really starting out in this game, a lot of the people, even a lot of the teachers I was around about, they were even coaching, people that were suffering with anxiety and depression and basic mental health stuff, and they'd no experience of it, so they're really learning for a book or a course, or and what I learned on my journey, which I'm going to talk about a wee bit. I think it's important to document and explain, how I get into this and why I get into it, and the lessons that I got along the way, my way, so that we can see the stuff that first of all doesn't work, and then the answers, the solutions, the way back towards the light, back towards the answers for yourself, so you can start to make sense and make peace, and get to that place of how it's supposed to be. So my journey started in 1996, and I almost lost my life. Probably should have lost my life. How I never lost my life, I still wonder. Whether I was spared for this work, perhaps, I don't know. There seemed to be some reason that kept me alive. And after almost being beaten to death and having a mental breakdown because of recreational drugs, and then the beating for the Spanish military police on the back of that, the place that put me into, where I was broken within an inch of my life, mental breakdown, nervous breakdown, emotional breakdown, complete separation from myself, PTSD, the trauma that I went through, the beating that I got, and I suppose getting into that state of absolute survival, where you go deep inside yourself, and there's almost like a separation from the mind. The stuff that I went through is almost like it's too barbaric to cope from a conscious kind of normal level of thinking mind where I am just now. The thing that I went through, even the beating that I got before they get me back to the cells to try and get me back into the van, the military police, what I experienced that day, is it's really difficult to comprehend, and I was really not well when it happened, so that's probably one of the coping mechanisms I was able to navigate my way through the first wee bit. But then when I went back to the cells and the beating that I went through, And then, obviously the physical damage to my body, which very quickly when my mum and dad came and got me and took me back to Mallorca. So my dad came and got me and took me back from Ibiza back to Mallorca. And then within 24, 48 hours, I was in a medical facility, running the blood tests, checking my body. They thought I had brain damage because of the hematomas on my head. My hands were smashed up, my face was smashed up, my foot was broke, and really in not the best shape. And that physical beating, at the very beginning, the breakdown and the place that I probably went to deal with that, the coping mechanisms that I had to really to pull out for somewhere. It's amazing what the body has the ability to do. But the way that I basically dealt with it was to basically flip out, and go just absolutely bananas with it. That's the way it seemed to express itself through me. So very quickly, inside probably a week, I've been back in Mallorca after being through different, healthcare facilities. Because they'd found drugs in my system, then I was into a drug rehab place which lasted a couple of days, and it was obviously that wasn't going to work. And then very quickly, my mum and dad basically, they had to sign me into basically a mental hospital right in the middle of Palma. And the first night I was in there was basically chained to a bed, bars on the window, just horrible, oppressive, the heat right in the middle of summertime. And when I think back to the lowest that I ever was in terms of my own journey, then that was pretty close. I've spoken about it on here before, how that night I had to basically urinate myself, which was just, even as sick as I was, how horrible and degrading, and just really kind of a sad kind of position that you find yourself in. And then, after spending the next couple of months in that facility, where really all they did was kind of stabilise my medication. They used to give me these things called bazookas, they would call them. The orderlies would come in, and it was like a game to me. There'd be 3 or 4 giant orderlies, they were like military guys, and they would come in and basically pin me, and then they would put this big bazooka into my buttock, and you had about 5 or 10 minutes before you were then sleeping for the next 10, 12 hours, whatever it was, and that's the thing that really kind of stabilised me, I suppose switched me off. I believe that facility probably saved my life because of how manic I was at the time. I was in such a kind of hyper state, that kind of flight or fight response, and just being completely off my nut. But over the course of those couple of months, until they were able to stabilise me, just really not well, really like almost comatose, because of the medication they'd been giving me. And then eventually when they basically they gave me the okay to come back home, it was flying back, private jet with 2 doctors was the only way they would do it. That's the only way they saw I was going to be fit enough, without being obviously a threat, I suppose. They couldn't put me on a commercial airline. And then came back here, and again very quickly, after the deal was that I would come back and get into a hospital, again because there was drugs in my system, it was like rehabilitation, so it was the 12 steps and all that kind of stuff, and that wasn't going to work. And very quickly when I started to detox from the medication that they gave me over in Spain, then that was really my first, I suppose, at the time I didn't know it, but anybody who was looking in, and some of the conversations I had with the doctors and the therapists then, and remember some of the ways they would look at me, that obviously something wasn't right. My nervous system is shot to pieces. At the time I was smoking cigarettes, so I would have one cigarette and I would be shaking uncontrollably. And I remember one of the doctors saying to me, like, you must be, do you think you've maybe had a nervous breakdown? And I was like, what do you mean? What does that even mean? And then explained about mental breakdowns and all that kind of stuff, So I was probably at that point, that wasn't the lowest that I got. That happened a wee bit after that, where I was basically sectioned again under the Mental Health Act, up to the old hospital up at Hartwood. Again, 24-hour care and supervision. I'm pretty sure I was tied to a bed on there at one point, probably maybe the first night, because my only intention was to get out and escape. I couldn't believe that they'd signed me in. God bless my dad, who basically saved my life by putting me in there, because I was so far gone by that point and really not well, that he had to do it. But from the end of the summer of 1996, right through the autumn, where they stabilised the medication in Hartwood again, a couple of weeks I was just bouncing off the ceiling, just all over the place. Didn't really consider myself to be ill in terms of mental health. Couldn't understand why I was there, which that's a good indication that you probably should be there. But then when eventually, they stabilised the medication, and I really it stopped me in my tracks. And then off the back of that, when they started to they didn't wean me off the medication, they basically stopped the medication really, really quickly. That was my first realisation that something wasn't right. That's when I really crashed back to reality. And I realised that I wasn't well because the world basically caved in on me. I had panic attacks, the world, the weight, you would feel the world on your shoulders. And then for the first time, the real the doom and the blackness and the oppressive just weight that could be like hopelessness was what it felt like, just really blackness and like no hope, no feelings, no emotions because of the medication I was on. And that was my first real realisation. I suppose I was probably healthier in terms of I was making myself back to, probably the real me, because the feelings and the emotions and the thinking within my mind was getting back to not normal, absolutely not, but I could make sense of stuff. And then, when the medication stopped, then, the world caved in on me. And from there it was into, different therapies, different doctors. I spent a bit of time in the Priory in Glasgow, and again it was all about medication. They tried to put me on lithium at the time. I remember looking into that. This is before really the internet was just probably just starting up and looking and trying to research what was involved in that. And sitting, I was in the Priory for probably a couple of weeks, and every single day there would be different therapies, and every single one of them, whether it was the art therapy or the cognitive stuff, you're talking about things, or you're trying to make sense of things. There wasn't a single thing that made me feel any better. In fact, every single one of them made me feel worse. They really did. The wee guy who ran the place, the wee psychiatrist, every time he saw me, he used to run. He would basically see me coming, he would disappear. So the entire system, in my experience, the medication probably stabilised me at a time when I was bouncing off the walls. But, in terms of making me better or making me feel, back to the way that I was hoping to get back to. I remember at the time, my parents asking the doctors, like, how long is he going to be on this medication? And the answer was basically he'll be on it for the rest of his life, and that was back, 28 years now. To think that I could still be on that medication and how much of a detriment that would have been to me. And, how blessed I was, after going through all of that, and the pain and the suffering, and, I suppose summer, end of the autumn into Christmas time, 1996, being home at Christmas time and just really feeling the heaviness within the house and the sadness and, almost breaking up the family, I suppose would have been completely understandable. For us, that wasn't an option because my mum and my dad, I remember when the doctor saying to my mum, like, this is probably going to break you up. My mum was like, fucking no chance, that is not going to happen, because of love, and they basically loved me back to life. They loved me back to, to being stable. And that for me at the beginning was walking about the supermarket with my mum. I was too sick to go to work. I was off the medication. I was having panic attacks. I was having, episodes of PTSD, complete blackness, no feelings, no emotions. Where the soldiers would be putting guns in my mouth and clicking the guns. So for many, many months, I never slept, hardly at all. Every time I shut my eyes, I'd have guns in my mouth, or whether it was the hoses that they had on me, the water hoses or the pistol whipping. I was reliving these experiences, and really in this never-ending, figure eight chronic stress loop. Of pain and suffering and decimation that now that I know what I know, a lot of people don't get out of that, and I was absolutely suicidal. There was no question about it. There was at a time where I wanted to end it all and basically run away from it because it was never ending. There wasn't any break from it. There was no light. There was no possibility of getting better. We tried everything, just about everything, and there was no way I was going to make it back. So that's where my mental health, that's my experience of mental health. The anxiety, crippling anxiety, the depression, just blackness, hopelessness, suicidal, the weight of the world on your shoulders. No hope. Everything that I looked at was black. Everything that I saw, everything that even stuff on television, you would always be looking at the worst case scenario, and really seeing the world as a really a really hopeless, dark place. That's where I was, and lo and behold, that's what you see, isn't it, when you're in that place. And then, this is all about the answers and all about the solutions. That's what this work is all about. That's what the Vortex is all about. And so for me, the light that came in, it was basically one session with a man who was just really starting out his journey in terms of he was becoming, I suppose, a bit like a life coach. This is before life coaching, but he was helping people by passing on, tools, techniques, holistic therapies. I believe he was qualified in shiatsu at the time, and he basically came in and spent a couple of hours with him. He took me through a breathwork session, which would be, I think he read out a book, so it was like Yoga Nidra, just a guided relaxation session, and I went completely out of body, which gave me a break from the literal insanity and the madness I was living. And then off the back of that, then the light, something happened that day where the light came back on again, and I reintegrated back into my body. The man gave me hope. He basically gave me a hug and says, look, everyone's going to be okay, you're going to get through this, which up until that point, that was absolutely not going to be the case. All the doctors and the therapies, the therapists, as Richard Banley used to call them, talking about, when you sit and talk about how bad it is and what happened to you in childhood and why do you think you're no well and why do you think you've reached this place, and it didn't work. None of that stuff worked. In fact, it made it much, much worse. So my story and my qualifications, I suppose, to share, because the journey for me, and over the last 28 years since I came through that literal hell, and that's what it felt like. The quote of beyond this point, abandon all hope. That's the gates of hell. When you step into that, then you're done forever. That's what it felt like for me. It was never ending. So for them to experience that and go through that and still, obviously remember it all, or certainly most of it, or certainly enough of it. I'll probably black some of the stuff out, but I remember enough of it, to remember where I was and the lack of feelings that I had, and what it did to my girl, who's my wife now. God bless her, she went through the whole thing. What it did to my mum and my dad, and those around about me, how people were reacting and responding to me. Some of the stories, some of the just horribleness that people were saying about me, and the things that I was meant to have been doing, or the lies that people were telling about me. You talk about kick a man when he's done. So that's where it started for me. But as with every great story, that there needs to be, if that's where it ended, then, which it does for a lot of people, but for me, for whatever reason, I was spared. And from that day when I reconnected back into myself, and when the stress was turned off, when I was given another chance. And that was the January of 1997. Then for the last 28 years, I've really been working on these tools and techniques, first and foremost myself, the desire to heal myself, the desire to make sense of why I got to where I got to as I started for 10, and then to eventually climb out the hole. And for the first 10 years, I was really kind of healing myself, dealing with all sorts of stuff, dealing with childhood stuff, which I've spoke about on here before, heartache, heartbreak, obviously the addiction, the trauma that I went through on all different levels, the mental affliction that you take on, the physical pain, the decimation, the separation from your heart, the separation from your soul. I went through the whole thing. And the first 10 years was all about, healing that, making sense of it and get myself back up to speed again. And then, going on a journey to heal myself. And over the last 28 years, obviously I'm now in a much better place, to the point where the stuff and the tools and the techniques that I share every single day in here, we help so many people find relief. And things like, anxiety and depression and mental health. When people come to see me, the first question I ask them is like, how bad is it? Because a wee bit of anxiety or a wee bit of depression, and I think to where I was, so if I can make it back for that, then obviously, you understand like modelling, or you copy what somebody else has done. If you do the same stuff that I've done, then it makes sense to me, and this is what I see every single day. No matter how bad it is, and there's a whole scale of mental health challenges just now. It's a spectrum, isn't it? Who does not have some sort of mental health challenge, whether it's fear or uncertainty, or a wee bit of anxiety, or depression, or feeling low, or can't sleep, or a wee bit overwhelmed. So everybody's going through it in a certain way. You can't not, because of the way the world is set up just now. But for me, the answers that I found, the solutions that I found, and I suppose over the last probably 8 or 9 years since the Vortex opened, and the way that I've been sharing it with people, I'm really just a bridge builder. I help people. I believe I create shortcuts. It's not going to take you like 15, 20 years to get this. It's normally one session, to help somebody find relief. So no matter what it is that they're coming in with, from the really entry level stuff all the way up to, the heavy stuff, the childhood childhood trauma, the sexual abuse, the soldiers with PTSD, the decimation, the grieving, the heartbreak, the heartache, the separation for the self, for the soul. There absolutely is a way to get back to the way that it's meant to be. And that's why, this mental health day, for years and years now online, I'm about mental well-being, which is very different from mental health. When you talk about the mental health day, that straight away the picture I see anyway, is the darkness, and the sadness and how many people are suffering. And mental well-being is a completely different thing. That's like the light compared to the darkness. So this is all about mental well-being. All focuses on the solutions. I think it's important to see, the challenges that we face and where they come from. Whether it's the anxiety, the depression, the trauma, whether it's chronic stress. Where is the source of that? And you just need to look to the world, to see where it's coming from. There are so many things that we can do to make things better. And, having the awareness to see, what you're doing to yourself as a starter for 10, so straight away you'll be looking at, somebody's diet, what they're eating, the amount of processed food that's going in. The toxicity that comes from so many different areas, but what you stick in your mouth is a starter for 10. The amount of fat that people are eating. The body's 80% water, so I would suggest it needs quite a bit of water. Water-based foods would be the best. This electrical system, the current that runs through us, it absolutely works better when it's kind of making its way through, light, soluble, as opposed to the stagnation of fat. So high-fat diets is absolutely one. Caffeine is another challenge. The problem with mental health is that we spend so much time in our heads, we're stuck in our heads, and you get into your head and you start to worry and you start to get to that place, of overthinking and creating that figure eight loop, as I call it, and generating even more toxicity by literally worrying yourself sick. So when you start to add in, things like poor diet, you start to add in things like caffeine, if it's going to stimulate the mind. Excuse me, I'm still fighting this. It feels like the Rona a wee bit. This is week number 3. And I'm still struggling. A wee bit of Manuka honey for my throat. Right, so the chronic stress and the inflammation and the overthinking, things like caffeine, the amount of kids that I see, what they eat. I mean, shame on the entire school system, shame on even the supermarkets. I see the kids in Lanark making their way up to B&M bargains and coming out with packets of just absolute shite, processed sugar and poison and just fat, just absolute rubbish. And then you see them with their energy drinks and whatever's in them, what that's doing to your nervous system, how that's switching on your nervous system. I mean, there should be an absolute law against that. I watched a wee thing on YouTube the other day talking about the school system in Japan and how legally every single school requires to have somebody in the school system within the school, whether it's primary or the secondary school, who basically they educate the kids as to the benefits of real food, like whole food, proper food, and processed food is absolutely banned. You're not allowed processed food at all. There's no vending machines, there's no sweets, there's no snacks, and they're basically eating real food every single day. And you watch these kids, the like 3-4 courses of proper food, whole food, rices, and obviously meat and veg, and all that kind of good stuff. It inspired me last week. For the last probably 7 days, I've been on this kind of Asian fusion buzz almost every single night, just because of watching it and seeing these kids and watching how they're eating. And you switch that to our kids, and you see the amount of kids that are fat and the amount of kids that are really struggling, at an age in puberty, where it's the last thing you want to be doing is sticking that poison into your body. And then you fast forward that to, by the time they hit their late 20s or their late 30s. And the only way, if that's your way of eating, you need to remember that the body, it regenerates by basically what you put into it. How you breathe, the water that you drink, the food that you eat. If that's just processed shite all the time, then, is it any wonder that we're going to end up with disease? And, at some point, not that far down the line, the amount of kids that I know in their late 20s, a lot of them have never had a proper cooked meal in their life, which is absolutely heartbreaking. So when you look at things like, the caffeine, the fat, the lack of energy that comes from that food, There's a thing called net gain, so the amount of food that you eat. Say you have a big, like a McDonald's, like a Big Mac, and it'll always give you the energy. So what's the amount of energy you're going to get for that hamburger or beef burger or whatever it is, whether it even is beef. So when you eat that in and you take that in, even you see them down the street, whether it's Greg's or the kind of the stodge that we eat, then the body's got to convert that to energy. And that's why when you have a big meal like that, or you eat some sort of absolute shit like that, what it takes for the body to convert that to energy, there's a loss, there's a net loss, so you're basically in deficit to what you've taken in, what it's taken for the body to convert that, and then obviously after that you're feeling sluggish and tired, and you watch these kids going back to school and you're thinking, good luck with that, so the stagnation that takes place because of the diet, you add that into immobile, the kids are not moving that much, they're on their phones and they're basically sitting in their rooms, so they're not really getting out and moving. So there's a real stagnation that takes place with that. And for anybody who's suffering with mental health, that's the worst thing you can do is to stop. Because when you stop, then you get an opportunity to think, and again, you're back into your head, you're back into the mind, and then here we go again, the figure eight loop begins. And the problem and solution are two very different places. If you're in that place, if you're in that dark place and you start to dig that hole, and things aren't going well, it's very easy to start to make it worse very, very quickly. And I know certain circumstances where people have started digging that hole, and some of them never get out of it. Some of them have ended up taking their life, just because of a lack of awareness, as to see where they're spending their time and the inability to get out of their head. This time we're in just now, the information age, and earlier on I was just writing up on the board the inflammation age, because it's all about information, isn't it? The amount of toxic rubbish that's out there. The amount of stress and toxicity that's in this environment, no matter where it comes from, whether it's the air, whether it's the water, whether it's your food, social media, the amount of crap that's going into your head, what that causes within the brain. And if you're just sitting watching your phone a lot of the day, which a lot of these kids are doing, and then you take them into the school and they're basically sitting at their desk, again, watching a screen, they're looking into a book, the lack of movement and basically I suppose the ignorance is to see the significance of the importance of being mobile. Eating the right foods, breathing properly is absolutely part of it. The reason we breathe is to generate life force. So again, I can see this, when you watch kids, the amount of kids that basically breathe in and out through their mouth. So they're generating stress. So if you add in even that stress to all the other stresses, then before you know it, you can start to dig that hole that you never get out of it. So the inflammation, the chronic stress, that obviously feeds into the best way going through your life. Worry, fear, anxieties, in your head, stuck in the nut. Then before you know it, things like the sleep starts to get affected, and sleeping with the Wi-Fi on, sleeping with the phone. For a wee while there, I'd had my daughter when she was younger, and I'd have the phone maybe underneath her pillow, and you're just like, oh my god, the absolute poison that's coming off that Wi-Fi signal, and that's us that know. So for people that don't know, and basically the kids that are basically stuck, in that environment where the sleep is compromised, and then before you know it, then the cycle just continues and it goes again, and once they start digging that hole, neither wonder that so many people are suffering just now, so many people are, in that place. And then, what is the answer? What's the answer? If you look at the circus and you look at the world out there, what do we then do about it? It's medication, isn't it? It's straight to medication. The therapies don't work. When you take all these therapies, with all the love in my heart, they don't work. None of them work. Get in and talking about it, and let's identify why you're fucked. Let's identify why you're not well. Let's identify why you're depressed. Let's identify why you're anxious. There's no solutions in that, and straight away, the entire medical system needs to go. The whole thing needs to come down. When you understand the origins of how medicine came about, and who did it, and how it managed to make its way into the universities, and how everything was switched from, the nature, the holistic tinctures, which are all water-based, they're based on the planet, so the herbs and the different supplements and even things like real food that's grown in proper earth, compared to how the medical institution, how it came in, who was behind it, and basically how the medication, which is oil based. So again, you add oil into this 80% ish. specimen this? Well, probably no. With most people now, it's probably less than that because of the literal shite that we eat. You know, but if you start to add in the medications, then it's things like anxiety, things like depression, you know, things like mental health challenges. You start to then add in these medications, and all of a sudden, you know, whatever the source of these problems is, you know, then you start to suppress them. Because they pills, first and foremost, the body's compromised because it's then dealing with something that shouldn't be in there. So it's having to kind of work out like how it's going to manage that. And then what it does to the mind, you know, in terms of even if it stops the mind or slows the mind down and suppresses, you know, the source of whatever it is that needs to be resolved, then at that point, you know, there are so many people that I know that have been on, you know, antidepressants, anti-anxiety for the last 30, 40 years. You know, and they were in probably teenagers, some of the stories that I hear, and they get put onto some, you know, anti-psych pill or antidepressant or anti-anxiety pill, and they've been on it for the last 30 years, you know, and it's like they keep taking it, and the fear, when you suggest to them, like, is there any way you would consider getting off this? And it's just that fear of it's their whole life. You know, then you start to see like where they are, and then you start to learn, you know, about the complications that they're facing in their liver and their kidneys, and, you know, so the medication isn't a route. That's not a route. There's no goodness in that, unless it's like an antibiotic. That's the only real medication that I would say. And you take that all the way up to things like cancer. The amount of people that die through the literal poisons for the medication, as opposed to the cancer itself, you know, then the numbers don't lie. You know, and all the medication, as far as I can see, needs to go. Every single bit. The entire healthcare system is a model designed to create customers. So in terms of for mental health and well-being, the minute you start to take the pills, then you're compromised and you're going in the wrong direction. And they don't work. How many people do you know that go into antidepressants and actually feel better? You know, maybe for a short period of time, and I think that's a placebo as well, where they think it's doing them some good, so they just kind of stick with it. But in terms of getting them back to the way that they're meant to be, which should be, you know, pill-free, that's absolutely available. You know, and what happens, they normally just start to increase the dosage because they're just trying to, that's what they did with me, they just kind of had to find that balance. So they're just topping up all the time to the point where you're absolutely comatose, there's nothing you can do. You know, so the answers are not within that. You know, so we know what the problems are. You look at the world and all the challenges that we face. That's the toxicity and the stress and the inability for human beings to deal with that. Then obviously the overwhelmment that comes through that is going to take a lot of people to a place where they can't cope. And all of a sudden you get stuck into your head. You're not sleeping properly. You're eating shite. You're not moving. You're drinking the wrong things. How do you escape? Drink, drugs and rock and roll. Good luck with that. You know, that's obviously that adds fuel into the fire. And before you know it, you know, you're in a place where a lot of people don't get out of. You know, so that's where the world is. You know, that's where I'm not thinking mental health. You know, the entire system, that's the way that I see it. And all the while, you know, as always, we're back to the solutions. How do we fix it? How do we make it better? And it's actually really quite simple. Well, it's simple, but it's no easy. Dead simple, but for a lot of people, especially those who are in the addictions of the food and eating rubbish and the processed crap, addicted to drama, addicted to, you know, the toxicity of their life, then it would be really challenging to make it better. Even I suppose the offering somebody, you know, to what would it be like to take the coffee out of your life, to take the caffeine out of your life, to take the fizzy drinks out of your life, what would it be like to not eat fast food for a week? And it's like people have got such an addiction by design, you know, their body's literally addicted to it, whatever poisons are in their foods, you know, then to try and take that away to somebody who's already struggling, then it's obviously going to be really challenging. But the good news is there is a way. There absolutely is a way to get the body back into balance, to get it back into coherence. Mental well-being is actually pretty simple. We need to get you out of the head. That's the big thing within this. All of this is being created within your head, and you're doing it to yourself. And I've been saying for years and years now, because of my own experience, that anxiety, depression and mental health is an absolute choice. And that's hard for some people to hear, especially if they're really struggling. Most people don't know. Most people are in that, especially the people in a really low place, the amount of drama that's in their life that they're creating, their focus is all about poor fucking me and victim consciousness and why did this happen to me and how bad is this going to get and somebody please help me. Again, looking for the help from the external. In my experience, the way that I did it, I had to get to a point where, you know what, I'm going to do this myself. I need to do this myself. Nobody is going to do this for me. It's certainly the system isn't going to do it for me. You know, so that takes a certain kind of type of person to get to a certain type of place. I love it when people are on the bones of their arse. I say that often. Somebody that comes in here that's broken with addiction, they've got nothing left, and they need to do the work. somebody who is at a place where they've tried everything and nothing has worked. I saw it last night down by the riverside, where it's like, this needs to work. So all of a sudden, sitting in a river at night time, freezing cold up to your neck, and what that's going to do for every single system in the body, when it comes to the point where you don't have a choice, that's a great place to be. But for so many people, that isn't the way. They just basically keep going through and they keep taking the medication. They're handing your power, your power over to somebody else. You're handing it over to a doctor, and the doctors, I do believe, have got the best of intentions. God bless the ignorant. That's the best thing I could say about the entire healthcare system. You try and convince any doctor that medication isn't the way. Why? Because that's what they've basically spent the last, 7, 8, 10 years of their life training, sitting learning all these big fancy words and how it affects the system, and that's the only way. The allopathic methods is the only way that they understand. But it would take somebody fairly evolved, a doctor that's fairly evolved, to step back and go, you know what, that doesn't work. Why? Because of the evidence. These people don't go off this medication. They never get better. So at that point, we need to step away from that and we need to move towards the light. That whole thing doesn't work. The answer, the evidence is there. We can see it. It doesn't work. So then what does work? And that's why the way is the way. Back into alignment with how it's meant to be, back into Mother Nature, to get back into balance, to get back into coherence. And it's all about switching off the stress. It's all about getting out of your head. The problems that we create within our own mind by overthinking and chronic thinking and stinking thinking, we need to stop that. And the biggest challenge is there's so few people know how to do that. And if you can't switch this off, then you've got no chance. If you're stuck in your head, it's mental health. And we're trying to get to mental well-being. So if you're unaware and you're ignorant and all you're doing is spending your time, thinking about how bad it is, thinking about where you went wrong, thinking about, how the wheels come off and the mistakes that you've made, all of a sudden you just start to you reinforce it, and all of a sudden it just starts to build momentum, and sometimes that momentum can go so far you never get back. The same is true the other way. It's very easy, once you know how to stop it, once you know how to basically switch off the head, once you know how to get out your head, and stop thinking. Peace of mind is a great place to be, to no matter what you're coming in with. Some of the soldiers that I worked with, they come back with just the most horrendous stories, and they can't switch it off. And the way, the tools, the techniques, the ability to switch off your head, just to stop, just to give yourself a break. That's what happened to me that day when that man lay me on the ground and took me through some breath work. It gave me an opportunity to stop. Nothing get better. I didn't make massive leaps in the right direction. I simply stopped going in the wrong direction and took a break. And that was enough to let that light come back into me. And then once you turn the tanker around, then you can go in the opposite direction. So the breath is the key. And the intentional breath that I teach, it's not just the breathing techniques. They can take it to a certain place, going in and learning how to breathe with function. But it's the intentional breath. It's what you do with that breath, and that's why I believe this system within the vortex is so powerful. When you understand how it works, when you understand and know how to get people out of their head, how to switch off the head, how to basically stop yourself thinking, how to stop yourself worrying, how to stop that constant never-ending loop of how bad it is, and the doom and the gloom and the hopelessness and woe is fucking me. When you know how to stop that, which I absolutely do, no matter who it is that comes in, there's different ways through the breath work, and then through guided, the intentional words, the intentional kind of phrases and the guidance that I use, the ability to basically slow yourself down and then actually stop, just to find some relief. That can be enough to save somebody's life. I've seen it before. I saw it when I was in Chrissy's house during that summer back in 2017. Laddie chapped the door, attempted suicide and just all over the place. Didn't know who he was, didn't know whether he was, the voices he was hearing. His next stage was to go and get locked up, take him down to ward, whatever it is, in the hospital, and basically tie him to a bed and give him some medication. And I watched what happened, just by teaching him how, and that was with Wim Hof method breathing, which is more stress. That's so antiquated now. That hyperventilation, that's the worst thing. I would never do that now. I would just happen to get away with it at that time, probably because of my intention. But there's different ways of doing it to basically de-escalate the stress, to get out of the head, to slow the mind down, and to eventually stop. Once you stop this, then everything changes. And the plan is to get out of this and to reconnect back into that, to reconnect back into your heart, to reconnect back into yourself. And if this is overactive, that's impossible. That's why we need to get you out of head, and that's why the intentional breath is so important, it's so powerful. So there is a way, there are many parts to it. As a starter for 10, we need to stop, and then we need to reconnect back into the self, back into your heart, back into your soul. And at that point, that's where the miracles take place. Things like, relaxation, letting the stress go in the body. The amount of people that have basically carried chronic stress their whole life, so when you get a break for the first time, it's like, it can be life changing. It can literally be like life affirming, life saving. Something you've never experienced before. Just the ability to not think. When you've been in this never ending constant, never figure eight loop of always being on it, always switched on, chronic stress, fight and flight, the active conscious thinking mind, always trying to find the answers, always trying to find the solutions. That's really tiring. So if you have the ability, to use that when you need it, but then the ability to switch it off is even more important. So when you go to bed at night time, you can actually sleep. Or when you sit down in relaxation, you can give yourself a break for you. And then beyond that, into meditation. Because once we get out of this, then the plan is to reconnect back into your heart, back into the soul, back into the self. That divine essence that we carry inside of us. This is why this program fixes everything it touches. Every single thing, no matter what it is, any ailment, any condition, no matter how bad it is, once we stop and we reconnect back into the self and we remember how we're supposed to feel, the entire world changes. That's why I see miracles almost every single day. The reconnection process is what it's all about. So, exciting stuff. We switch off the stress, reconnect back to the self. Diet is a huge thing, getting busy, proper busy in terms of exercise would be great for mental well-being. What happens to the chemistry within the body, the chemistry within the brain when you start to use oxygen, and it can be a walk, it can be a brisk walk, without your phone, and just breathing with function as you're walking. Most of the training that I do now is when I'm walking my dog. She's right behind the camera, God bless her. And we're out walking and I'm doing functional breathing, just giving my body, oxygenating my body, giving it that gift. And then exercise as well. Anything that's going to give you a distraction. The breath is an absolute key. Cold exposure is an absolute gift. Anybody who's really, really bad, who's really struggling, at this time of year, you go and sit in a river, as we did last night, or you go and sit in an ice tub, no matter how bad it is. See, that the good thing about cold exposure is you can't be anywhere else, especially this time of year in Scotland. The river last night was probably running at single figures, low single figures, and because it's running, it's stealing your energy. So if you sit in that environment, being in Mother Nature, being in that space with no phone, out of your head, an hour and 15 minutes last night, guided relaxation and breath work, the intentional breath, lying under that big tree, feeling the energy coming up through Mother Earth, and then getting back into the flow, literally into the river, and being in the flow of the river, and just allowing it to wash over you. The stress that's generated within your body, good stress under relaxed conditions and under controlled conditions is actually really good for you. It's just when you get chronic stress that compounds on top of everything else, that's when people get really sick, that's when strokes and all that kind of stuff happens. But good stress under relaxed conditions, like looking for the good stress, it will come in and it will take away the bad stress. And I watched it again last night, to be in that river, people in that river, 8:30 last night, pitch black, sitting in the river, freezing cold, running over them, hands in the earth, bare feet on the soil, feeling the energy that's coming up through Mother Earth. That energy that comes up through Mother Earth, all you need to do is be in it. You just need to stand in it, and that energy will start to heal every single cell in your body. So there's so many things, there are so many answers, but you need to experience it to understand it. You really do. You need to go through the whole thing. There's an entire system. It's dead simple. It takes, I suppose, a big enough reason, a big enough why. My intention is to help as many people as possible. And that's what the experience is all about. And next Tuesday, the experience is going to be live. That's going to be the 15th of October. So the experience this week is all going to be about mental well-being. It's going to be about switching off the head. Anybody who's struggling, anybody who's suffering with anxiety, depression, overwhelmment, chronic inflammation, can't sleep, worried, fearful, which a lot of people are just now, please come and get the experience. It's free. It's a gift from me to you. All the stuff that I've picked up along my way, the stuff that I use every single day, the stuff that I teach every single day. You need to experience it to understand it, and that's what the experience is all about. We're going to start to increase the experience to every single week. The plan is to take this to the world and help as many people as we can, as well as all the other stuff we're doing. But for me, again last night, to give a gift away and do something for free, which was the first 23 years of my life, and that's what the experience is all about. We're not looking for anything in return. You just need to sign up. There's no catches. We're not going to start hitting you with sales calls after it or any of that kind of stuff. It's a gift from me to you to come, to learn how to breathe with intention, to learn how to breathe with function, the ability to get out your head, to stop thinking, to experience peace of mind. Where we go from there, we reconnect back into your heart, we reconnect back into your soul. You're going to learn how to meditate, you learn how to meditate properly, you understand what meditation is. The intention of meditation is to reconnect back to God, and we carry that divinity inside of us. So that's why meditation is so significant. That's why it's so important, especially in these times, to reconnect back to the solutions, to reconnect back to the light. And what you'll find is, in a really short period of time, no matter what it is you come in with, that every single thing in your life is going to get better, and that's an absolute promise. Next Tuesday night, the 15th, is going to be 8 o'clock till probably back at 9. There will be a link on this video, and anybody who's looking to sign up, anybody who's interested, please. I think we're limited because of the way Zoom's set up. I think we're limited to possibly 100, maybe. I need to check that. So anybody who's interested, please let us know. It'll be your email address, and you'll get sent out the link and reminders leading up to it. If you can't make it on the Tuesday night, there will be a waiting list for it as well. So if you can't make it, please let us know, and we can basically take you off the list and we can bring people into it that would benefit from it. My intention is to help, as always. Once you get it for yourself, I do believe you need to pass it on. You know, once you get yourself, once you master yourself, once you master your feelings and your emotions, once you came from where I've came from, and you get to the stuff that I got to a place where really pretty good. You know, I would say that the journey that I've been on, it would be terms of success. Now, do I live at that place all the time? Absolutely not. Especially when I'm teaching all the time. That's been the case this year. I've been teaching it so much that I've probably slipped a wee bit myself. But for the darkness that I was living in, my story is literally darkness to light. That's why this is called the Darkness to Light Godcast. The ego, you know, the excess, you know, the literal hell that I started in. You know, and then how I made it out through that, climbing your way out it, and then back into the light, you know, back into, you know, reconnection with myself, you know, reconnection back to the divine, and then living in that way, the way that it's meant to be. So when you reach that place, then at some point you need to pay it forward, and that's what this work is all about. It's about passing it on, helping as many people as we can in these times where so many are needing it. It's dead simple. It happens in one session. It's not a direct debit. Come and get it. If you want to get round about it more, the programme is live every single day. We've got an entire programme. Version 2 is just about to be released. Excited for that, as well as all the other stuff that's working on the Vortex just now. We've got an entire team of people that are looking to take this to the world. So grateful to all you guys. You know who you are. We keep moving forward every single day, one soul at a time. Every single day is a plan to help one soul every single day. That's the plan, that's the mission. And eventually we're going to get to that 100th monkey effect, because this works. This absolutely works, but you need to experience to understand it. Next Tuesday night, 8 o'clock. Hope to see you there. God bless. If you're struggling, come and get it. All my love to you and yours. Peace out. Have a great day. God bless. And bye for now.